Washington, some people say gridlock. And that makes the work of the elected officials we send there to work on our behalf, represent us, look out for us, our families, the communities we live in, so difficult. And Congresswoman Yvette Clarke is going to be my guest to tell you how hard she works in Congress to make sure that the issues President Obama spoke about in his recent State of the Union speech becomes legislation that works for you. In this program, we'll be talking about the immigration reform that affects so many people you know. We'll also be talking about two issues that affect women: violence against women and paycheck fairness. Congresswoman Clarke, welcome to Brooklyn 45.
Thank you for having me, Sam.
Well, it's always a pleasure. You know, the majority of our Brooklyn 45 team members are women. And they are, of course, interested in these two issues, the paycheck fairness legislation and violence against women.
Yes.
But I want to talk about immigration first.
Sure.
Because that affects not just men, but women. Not just women, but men. There seems to be this divide in your house.
Yes.
Can you talk about that divide?
Sure. You know, it has been since the 2010 elections that we have seen the rise of a far radical right within the Republican Party, unwilling to compromise on any issues that they believe will give President Obama a so-called win. And it's really unfortunate because in plotting his demise, we're really holding back the nation. Initially, these Tea Party candidates were there to be deficit hawks, if you will, but have turned in many instances to social issues as wedge issues and another means of trying to hold back a progressive agenda for the nation. So that is what has brought us to the point of where we are today, struggling to address the deficit through a grand bargain, which is the preference of many of us in Congress and particularly the President, which balances out our need to cut waste out of the federal government with the need to protect certain programs, whether that's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. It also directs us to look at investment through revenue that we can realize. But these individuals within the Republican Party have been basically the tail that has wagged the dog and has thereby created the gridlock that you described in your opening.
Of course, the Republicans have countered the DREAM Act that I know that the Democrats have been working so hard to achieve with what they term the Achieve Act. Can you explain this Achieve Act as you see it?
Well, you know, it's a mockery of what we really need is comprehensive immigration reform, and I think that that's what people need to pay attention to. They're basically picking and choosing winners in the whole spectrum of immigration. We know that people come to the United States for varying reasons. Some come for education. Others come for opportunities, whether that's employment, entrepreneurial. Some come as children due to family circumstances needing to be in the nation. What the Achieve Act would do is focus solely on bringing in those who are professionals already, those who have already attained a certain amount of academic success and would fill sort of the upper echelons of the technology and energy sector, bringing in sort of the brain power. But what that does is it neglects all those immigrants who are here stuck within the broken immigration system. It doesn't provide opportunities for those individuals to make it good with the United States and apply their talents to the growth and development of our communities. So I would ask that your audience not be fooled by the term achieve, because there are many ways of achieving, and this act that the Republicans have put forth really is discriminatory and in the way that it goes about selecting who becomes eligible as immigrants to the United States.
There's a recent poll that said that 72% of people believe that undocumented workers should be given green cards or citizenship. What's your response to that?
I mean,
I almost know your response.
Comprehensive immigration reform is a concept whose time has come. We recognize that for so many families living amongst us, this is an imperative, and it's reached a fever pitch here in the United States when you look at the numbers of young people whose lives are sort of in limbo and whose lives are really being diminished by an inability to go on to education, to serve in the armed services, or to be entrepreneurs, to be employed, quite frankly. And, you know, again, we've reached that tipping point where Americans recognize that this is a very valuable asset that we have sort of marginalized in the conversations about who becomes American, and we need to manage it differently, and comprehensive immigration reform is the way to go.
What is your take about Mario Rubio, who is this new Republican star? What is your take on his path to citizenship?
Marco Rubio, well, he is a new so-called rising star of the Republican Party. He's Cuban, so his immigrant experience is different from the average immigrant coming to the United States, in that his ancestry has been given asylum in the United States as a result of Cuba being a communist nation. There's a lot less of a challenge for those who are Cuban descent to come to the United States and to be fast-tracked into green cards and citizenship. So I'm glad that he sees the need to do comprehensive immigration reform. I differ from him on a number of issues, one being you know, how onerous the earned citizenship becomes in terms of finances for people. We're very concerned about that. And I would say that would probably be the only area. I mean, a lot of what he has put forth has been similar to what has already been drafted in legislation by Democrats, which is why, you know, I'm kind of baffled by him trying to make a distinction that indicates that he's come up with a solution that, you know, quite frankly, had already been in discussion already.
I think he attempted to preempt President Obama and then realized he had no place to run.
Exactly. Interesting.
There's an interesting bill in Arizona that gives police the power to stop people and check their immigration status on their daily rounds. I hope that doesn't happen here. But what is your take on that?
Well, I mean, it was meant to signal to undocumented individuals that you have to fear law enforcement, that you have to fear being a resident of Arizona, and likewise Alabama, where in Alabama they took things a step forward by saying that any citizen who came in contact with someone who was undocumented had an obligation and would bear liability if they didn't turn that individual in. So that if you had students using a public library in Alabama and the librarian suspected that they were undocumented, she could request to see their documents, and if they're unable to show it, would be under obligation by law to turn them in. So, you know, those areas had some very draconian measures that they put forth, really to scare the undocumented population, to exercise some level of authority and power over their daily lives, which was very vindictive and extremely unproductive. And I had the occasion to travel to Alabama, actually, to work with my colleague Terry Sewells, the Congresswoman of Birmingham, Alabama, to fight against this type of legislation.
Sounds like stop and frisk and immigration aside, stop and frisk.
Oh, well, it's very similar, and not to negate what